Nairobi city is growing very fast, both in population and, of course, in size. The demand for water, as it stands now, is about 700,000 cubic meters per day, against a supply of about 500,000 cubic meters per day. So there is a shortfall. We are dealing with very old systems for distribution, and therefore you could say the distribution of this very precious commodity within the city may not be very equitable.
To Kayole in 2003. In those years, it was pathetic because we couldn't get adequate water. We had to go for a long distance in search of water. We were going as far as 1 kilometer.
Ya kutoa nje ndio expensive. Labda unaenda kazi unarudi, kama umechelewa kuna maji, utaenda kuitafuta wapi na usiku.
Zamani maji ya mfereji tulikuwa tunanunua 5 bob. Hiyo ya chumvi tulikuwa tunanunua 2 bob kwa mtungi. Maji ilikuwa ina effect sana. Inajaza tumbo. Sometimes unakuta unahara. Sasa iko mzuri maji ya chumvi.
Sipendi juu hata naumwa na mgongo. Nikibeba maji nasikianga vibaya sana. Ni kama hata inaniongezea shida kwa mwili. Hata mbili nikibeba ni shida. Ilikuwa inafanya hata tutumie maji haitoshi. Hata ukiwa na mtoto ni shida juu hata kuiendea ni ngumu.
Tunatafuta watu wengine wa kubeba maji, shauri ukienda na mtungi mmoja hutatosheka. Lazima ukodeshe gari kama mgoteni ndio ikubebea maji kama mtungi 3, 4 au 6.
The challenges of informal settlements are in themselves complex, and in Kenya we've been a good example of how complicated the situation can be. The World Bank has been involved in investments and putting in infrastructure for water supply and sanitation in various cities, especially Nairobi. At around 2007, the Water and Sanitation Infrastructure Improvement Project was designed to improve the infrastructure, deliver more water to Nairobi through improved trunk mains and treatment. And in doing so, we from WSP, Water and Sanitation Program, discussed and negotiated with the client, which was Athi Board and other boards in the country, to ensure that specific amounts of investments were set aside for low-income areas.
It takes a very big paradigm shift among our leaders, especially in our planning people, for us to at least accept that these people require services, whether ownership is sorted out or not. The fact that they are called informal may also be a reason, simply because when you are informal, you are not within the planning grid of the public sector or any other service provider for that matter. So you kind of do not exist, yet you exist. And this may be a very strong reason for utilities not actually addressing this.
It was very clear to everybody that the country cannot develop ignoring the needs of the poor. And therefore, it was important to get something in place to guide focused interventions targeting these areas.
The social connection policy is basically a policy that asks the utility to look for creative, affordable and targeted approaches to serve the underserved within its, let's say, limits of financing capacity and technical ability. One of the key lines we've seen from social connection policies has been policies need to be negotiated and implemented in line with an investments program. This is critical and has been one of the determining factors to the successes which we've seen in a city like Nairobi.
The biggest challenge was, first of all, to convince my board that this thing will work. I had to do a lot of benchmarking, to do a lot of presentation. Good that they were convinced and they approved the social connection policy, which we are implementing now. There's a lot of sense in actually investing in the informal settlement. By providing the service there, we will control the water wastage in the informal settlement, and it means then we'll be able to get revenue from the sale of that water.
In the design of these components that were negotiated as part of the investments, feasibility designs were undertaken, and in those feasibility designs, socio-economic studies were carried out in selected low-income areas. And this was carried out for Nairobi, Mombasa, Malindi, and Eldoret under the bank investment project. The socioeconomic studies involved mapping of where those settlements are, studies that captured the willingness of the residents to pay for services. They also captured the affordability, because once you have willingness to pay for service, one has to look at the affordability.
The mapping was done so that we could be able to identify the needier households that they needed water. And in this case, we found that each and every homestead was earning less than 12,000 in a month. And for 12,000, if you divide into the needs of a home, then it could be very little if we would be asking them to pay about 5,000 upfront to Nairobi Water so that they can get the connection.
Financing was the biggest hurdle that we faced and the utilities face in the social connection policy. And the first challenge that came out when we were discussing this policy was that they were worried that they would not have the finances to actually implement it. So we asked them to approach a microfinance bank in Kenya, which was implementing community projects, lending to community projects, and helping those communities implement those projects. When outputs are shown, subsidies are then given.
We did not have a proper knowledge of understanding of how the water sector functions, the risk involved in putting your money in the water sector. But with the support of the WSP, we were able to come up with a design of a program which was providing output-based subsidies. The focus of the output-based subsidy was basically to give the bank the comfort that if the project is implemented, a part of the component of the loan will be taken in as a subsidy and reduces exposure. The other entry point which we realized is that the demand for water was very high. And then we went down and now started looking for demand for paid for water. Not just demand for water, but now demand for paid for water. And we realized that in the informal areas and peri-urban areas, community do pay 5 to 6 times more than the people are properly connected into a working systems, especially large water service providers. This is a classical presentation of a microfinance arrangement, because individual households are given a small credit of about 10,000 Kenya shillings, and then they are asked to pay about 20% of that credit. The company borrows, but the company also extend a credit to the individual members. They sign an agreement with the company that I'll borrow 10,000, but I'll pay 1,500 in cash. The balance 8,500, I will pay over a period through water billing. So that is the real practice of what we call the microfinance.
The community negotiations during the mapping and discussions on approaches to be used is really the key, one of the key milestones in this social connection policies implementation.
You may want to give a community a project, but the community accepting that project is another thing. So the sociologist's work is to go and soften the hearts of these people using the informal settlement. Then the engineer's responsibility to come and do the handiwork, or the handiwork part of it, laying the pipe works. So what was done, we did a lot of community mobilization meetings.
The interested parties, such as the cartels, were always going to be a challenge, and we saw this from the word go. But what we did is we sought buy-in from the community at large, beyond the interests of a few cartels which benefited from exorbitant services provision. The fear they have in communities is that through this project, somehow the wealthier will come in and muscle out those who are poorer, or some of the residents, most of the residents who are on ground. So by selling this project as one that will serve each household with equitable services, and that there is no interest in other issues of changing land tenure. Remember, we went to low-income areas where some level of planning had been achieved. These negotiations were able to lead to agreements on how to move forward in terms of ensuring that the actual rollout of the project took place. One of the areas of concern that they kept on repeating and highlighted was that the youth had to be involved, because there are huge numbers of youth who are jobless, unemployed, who tend to go into crime and other social vices. We saw this as a risk, and they understood as leaders and peer leaders that if you involve them in the project, either as laborers or in engaging in the survey, that there was a high likelihood of buy-in and them seeing the project as theirs and not just a utility coming to put in infrastructure.
My name is Frida. I'm going to Soweto, Baiga and Central Zone, to go and fix the meters.
First and foremost, they told us about the water and how we'll go about it. We accepted. We cooperated, the fittings were done, and we got water.
So, hii project venye ilikuja, so tuliambiwa tukam tufanye job. Saa tukajitokeza kama leaders, tukapata job kama security. Na bado tunafanya design.
The occupied plots in Kayole, Soweto, they are around that 200. But we set a target of 2200 plots to be connected so that we can get benefit of the program. So far, we have 1850 residents or plot owners who have collected the application form. 1468 have actually paid the commitment fee of 1648. Then out of those, we have done now connections, 1245, that's by last week, Thursday. We have connected 1051 customers. From this program, we expect the following output. One, we'll have more customers hooked to our system. Two, we'll reduce non-revenue water in the company. Three, we'll actually accrue financial benefits, that's the revenue sale. Four, we'll have also increased the access to the people. Five, we'll have more kilometers of pipeline in Nairobi.
Hii maji kulingana na ile nyingine hapo awali, hii sasa ni mzuri sana kwa sababu watu wanaweza pata maji fresh kuliko venye tulikuwa tuna walk distant kwenda kufetch water huko juu. Kila mtu akiwa na maji safi ya kunywa itakuwa poa. Itakuwa poa.